rated 115 minutes, set in the English coastal town of Margate. Any of you have visited Margate or not? I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it. No? Okay. It's the turbulent early 1980s, I think 80 and 81, and it is sensitive drama romance starring Olivia Colman, and she's very good. She plays Hilary, manager of the local cinema, which is called The Empire, and that's situated across from the beach. She gets along really well with her fellow workers, who include the projectionist Norman, played by Toby Jones, and a rather diplomatic Neil, Tom Brooke, who sees all. And the latest employee is a 20-something black man, and I mention black man for a reason. His name is Stephen, played by, I think it's Michael Ward, but it's spelt a bit differently. But that's, I believe, the actor's name, who lives with his mother Delia, Tanya Moody, who's a nurse, and he has been subjected to racist taunts all his life. And obviously that's an important part of this movie. In spite of an early flare-up, though, Hilary and Michael hit it off, or Stephen rather, hit it off really, really well. She is impressed by his gentle and caring nature. His ambition is to study architecture, but those plans have hit a roadblock, hence why he's taken up employment at the cinema. Hilary struggles to rid herself of the seedy advances of her boss, played by Donald Ellis. This is a very different role for Colin Firth, I might say, and he's the one who runs the Empire Cinema. She also faces mental health issues, which have seen her hospitalised. And being off her meds, as she is, results in severe mood swings, the manifestations of which are pivot points in this movie Empire of Light. So, I mean, quite illuminating. It's an insightful work from the writer and director Sam Mendes, who did movies like 1917, slow burn, several layers and interconnecting threads. I found it poignant. It was quite distressing. At times it was delightful. And as I mentioned, I thought Coleman was ebullient. She was withdrawn. She was aggressive. Very impressive performance as Hilary. And Ward as well displays nuance as Stephen, who carries on his shoulders the weight of being a coloured man. I thought that Toby Jones came into his own as the movie progressed, with Norman showcasing his knowledge of and passion for the projected image. You've got to say that cinema itself, a love thereof, is a big part of the joy in this production, and Mendes has made sure of that with his considered shot selection. So I really enjoyed Empire of Light. I know that not everybody has sort of been as enamoured as I have. What did you think of it, Jacqui?
Empire of Light.
Sorry, are we on the same page here? Yes. Empire.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yes, I wrote the wrong thing down. Empire of Light, I really connected with this film. I thought Hilary was a great character. I really liked her story, the story of her life. Difficult, but very genuine. And I liked all of the secondary characters, and there were quite a few, although not so many that you wouldn't actually get to know most of them quite well. They all had an interesting role to play. Her interest in Stephen, not just perhaps, as you mentioned, his gentle nature, but very much the physical. I thought that was, in fact, stronger in many ways, because there were, that was obviously something she was craving. I loved the era. It was an interesting era to set it in, the 1980, just crossing over from New Year into 1981, because that gave some spark to a part of the storyline with the riots. And I particularly liked the setting. You mentioned Margate. I haven't been to Margate, but it's just such a classic English setting, the coastal area, and that beautiful Art Deco cinema. So exquisite piece of architecture and the interior furnishings. And
it was stunning. Really, it reminded me of the Rivoli, to be honest. I think the Rivoli is just magnificent here in Melbourne.
Definitely. Well, that's the same era. That's what it's all about. Yeah. And there's even a whole lot of what we see in a lot of Art Deco buildings in New York. That timber panelling and the mirrored pillars and that rippled glass. And a lot of the film focused on that as in the scenery and the backdrop, and
Well,
little areas like the foyer and the cafe room, or sorry, the tea room that the staff had. Beautiful little genuine bits of reality that, you know, could be memorable for us, but also gave the story a lot of interest.
Well, climbing up to the top of, you know, and seeing the abandoned areas of the cinema as well, that also reminded me, you know, I mean, you're somebody who loves architecture, and I know you've sort of taken an interest in Melbourne in that regard as well, and touring. I heard during the week as well that somebody said that Melbourne's architecture is quite special. Do you think it is? Or I mean, I'm a big fan of British architecture. So, I mean, we obviously borrow quite a bit.
Melbourne definitely is, and for one reason, and I think that we go back to the name Norm Gallagher and the BLF, if you remember. Oh, no, I don't remember. I think my parents told me about it. Oh, yes, the BLF, when they put bans on building destruction around Melbourne, Wheel and the Wrecker, and Melbourne was just being, Melbourne's old places were just being demolished willy-nilly as we drove forward for it to become a modern city, without recognising there was a lot to value.
Sorry,
a lot of it was explored in that documentary, The Lost City of Melbourne.
Absolutely, that Lido ran for many, many weeks, if not months, earlier from the end of last year into this year. And that talked a lot about this. It was very controversial at the time, of course, but we look back now and we say other cities went through and demolished all their old buildings and became modern, and we've managed to retain the blend, the mix.
It's a sidebar story. You talk about Norm Gallagher. As a young TV journo, I was sent by, I think this was a lark, I was sent to interview Norm Gallagher, who could be a bit frosty at times, apparently, to literally go into a pub with his mates and stick a TV camera in his face. That was one of my first jobs. I know. These guys were jokesters. I've given you the other story about the fact that because I'm such a man mountain, all of 164 centimetres of me, that I was given the job of interviewing the tallest man in football, and they stuck me on a box. So they're just some of the TV larks.
Well, Alex, I can kind of match you for that, because I had I was a cub reporter and was sent out. I think we went by helicopter actually, or light plane, whatever. Anyway, we flew out to when it was discovered that Norm Gallagher had a beach house that was being built with union funds and workers and all that. So that was a page one story at the time.
Wow. And I know we're sidebarring on sidebars, but I think I've told you the story about my hairiest moment in journalism. Have I not, Jacqui? No?
No, apart from meeting Norm Gallagher in a...
No. It was because, again, it was sort of quite common that we took light planes or helicopters. That was great. That was an interesting part of the job. But I can't recall where I was going, but I was in a light plane and I was next to the pilot, and suddenly, as we were just flying over parts of Victoria, the door next to me flew open. I was shiting myself, shall I say, and the plane dropped, right? So, and I'm thinking, what do I do in a circumstance like this? And we immediately looked for a some field somewhere to land. So, yeah, that wasn't my greatest moment, shall we say.
Did you live?
No. It's AI now. This program is for you. Exactly. Now, I was going to say, in terms of the production design of Empire of Light, I've got a lot of plaudits to be given to Mark Tildesley, who's the production designer. I thought that the attention to period detail was terrific. And the cinematography, Roger Deakins, he and Mendes worked together very well. I think this is their 5th film together. I mean, the craftsmanship is really evocative, bringing out the very finest in the seaside town of Margate. So, yeah, I mean, I'm pleased you enjoyed it. What about you, Peter? Did you enjoy Empire of Light as much as Jacqui and I?
I certainly did. I should mention Gus Berger's film, The Lost City of Melbourne, is still playing at a few cinemas around Melbourne.
Oh, thank you.
and the Nova Cinema has celebrated, I think, 6-month anniversary of playing the film. So it's incredible that it's still going. And yes, anyway, Empire of Light. Sam Mendes has not written many of his films, but he definitely wanted to write this one, and he has sort of used as a template some of his earlier films, which has melancholy aspects attached to it. Road to Perdition, American Beauty being good examples. This one is a multi-story sort of film that is centered around a cinema. And what is so interesting about this film is the way he interweaves a number of issues, the racial divide, Thatcherite Britain, mental illness and bipolar disorder, and the power of film, and the life of projectionists who live as part of the cinema, so to speak. He's interwoven a lot of those aspects into the story. Michael Ward is very good as the black actor, employee who brings that race issue to the fore, especially in the depiction also of his mother. It's interesting too, the representation of mental illness. Olivia Colman's character, who has bipolar disorder, she was obviously one of the early people who received lithium. Lithium was relatively new in the 1980s, and regulating that and the impact on some dosages having quite a significant impact on people so that they stopped taking the lithium is an example of how she tried to deal with that and tried to have a life, which is an essential part of the story. There is so much to admire in this film. Yes, it is quite melancholy in many respects, but it also has something important to say about the early 1980s, and Sam Mendes has done a great job. It's interesting how they refurbished an old building as a cinema in Margate to make the film to begin with, and yeah, look, overall I was very impressed by the film. It had a lot to say and I really enjoyed it.
Do you understand why it's sort of basically been marked down by? So I looked at this and I'm thinking, what is there to mark down in a film that really is extremely thoughtful and thought-provoking?
I think some of the problems with some reviewers may be that the film tries to deal with too many issues, they might think, and that they don't necessarily all fit together well in this 2-hour film. I disagree. I think it works well, and especially the homage to cinema, which we've seen in so many other films, like Babylon and Cinema Paradiso and so on. Toby Jones's character, a lovely character. Yeah, no, it's a very good film.
It's interesting. You know who I was thinking of, and some of us will remember him, Brian, the projectionist, who...
Brian, lovely.
Yeah. And, you know, I used to love going to... was it UIP in West Melbourne, and he always greeted you. I actually went to the projection room a few times, and it was a terrific fellow. I've got no idea what's become of him and where he is now. Does anybody know?
I remember him saying he was retiring, but I couldn't remember where he was going.
My understanding is that he actually went. I'm not sure whether he's still part of it, but he owned Backlot. Before it moved. I'm not sure whether he still owns part of Backlot, but that was my understanding. But anyway,
I think according to the Cinema Pioneers, I think he died a couple of years ago.
Did he?
Oh,
gee.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let's go to Greg with this. Are you? I mean, so far we've all agreed it's a very, very fine film, and I like the fact that somebody like Sam Mendes can take all these threads, put them together, and really make us think, and that's part of the strength of this movie. What did you think?
I'm not probably quite as enamored as you two. I thought for Love Letters to the Cinema, it was a little bit tepid for me. I expected something more along the lines of Cinema Paradiso here. Some of the elements didn't quite gel together for me. I didn't quite get the connection between Michael Ward character and Olivia Colman's Hillary there. I didn't quite get as emotionally engaged in their narrative arc there. But I did like the character of Norman, the projectionist, played by Toby Jones there, whose passion for cinema is obvious there. Some of the scenes set in the projection room reveal that nostalgia for the lost days of the cinema, where the projectionist actually loaded the film in and watched it and all that kind of stuff.
And the weight, Greg, the weight of the canisters as well.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff sort of you don't get anymore now, where it's all sort of digital, and you've got to wait for the kid behind the projection box to press the button sometimes. But the film I read was loosely inspired by Mendy's own memories of that era, and especially the character of Hillary here is loosely inspired by his own mother. I agree that it's beautifully shot by Roger Deakins there. The production design for the cinema, beautiful there. And I thought Coleman's performance actually was really good. She gives you a complex and dramatic narrative arc. But some of that stuff about the early 80s there didn't quite gel as much for me. I thought it was much more effective in films like Billy Elliot and that there. Yeah, it's an interesting film, but I'm...
So would you say what Peter was mentioning, that you think he tackled too much? Is that what you're saying?
I think he tried to tackle too much, and some of it worked a lot better than other elements of it, yeah.
That's interesting. Dave, what about you?
I'm on the side where I really enjoyed the film. I think one of the reasons why it's been marked down is because a lot of the younger audience now expect Sam Mendes' films to be like 1917 or Spectre or Skyfall. They forget that this is the director who gave us Revolutionary Road and American Beauty.
Yes.
To me, this film goes back towards those kinds of films that actually had something to say and are so well written. I really enjoyed this film. I thought that perhaps he did try to tackle too many topics, but I actually thought that it worked in a sense. I'm not sure, I don't want to do a spoiler here, but I thought one scene probably should have been made a bit smaller because it didn't really fit in with the rest of the film. But I loved this film. I thought it was a great love letter to cinema. Growing up, going to cinemas like the Rivoli and the Astor, it reminded me of my own film journey. I thought it was a really, really beautiful film, and I love the performance of Olivia Colman. Once again, she's an absolute standout in this film.
Absolutely. Score out of 10 from you for Empire of Light.
I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Peter.
8 out of 10 from me.
Greg King.
I'll give it 6 out of 10. I thought that scene where they had the supposed premiere of Chariots of Fire was a bit of an understated affair, which sort of didn't quite ring true for me. I thought it would have been much more spectacular. But, yeah, 6 out of 10 from me.
Okay. Jacqui.
7.5.
And 8 out of 10 for mine. So, generally speaking, a film certainly worth considering. Jair, 88.